So here you are drawing a character and you want to put them in an interesting setting, not just leave them on a blank white page, but you don't have time to rule a bunch of lines or learn the rules of perspective. I'm going to give you some ideas for adding depth to your drawings. We'll start with the simplest techniques and think more critically as we go. Each drawing will focus on one technique, but may also use others, building on what we have learned before. You can use these with any kind of drawing, from creating a scene from scratch to sketching in real life. Number 1. Draw things behind other things, or in other words, overlapping objects. This might sound really obvious, but it's first on the list for a reason. Drawing objects and then adding more behind them to fill up the space in your composition is the simplest way to give your drawing depth. You can see here that I'm building up layers of types of objects and leaving gaps to fill with each progressive layer. You might also notice that I am alternating between rounded organic shapes and straight horizontal and vertical lines. It's not a set formula, but keeping this contrast in mind can add variety to your image. I'm happy with how this came out, but maybe it still looks a little flat as a line drawing. What else could we do? Number 2. Draw things getting smaller with distance. Now this technique is about as close as we'll get to using proper perspective. You can use it in addition to the first technique, and it's especially handy if you have repeating objects of the same or similar type. The easiest way to think of this is drawing boxes that get smaller each time towards the background. It will make it easier to replicate the object you are drawing, as you can keep the shape and proportions within the confines of the box. Drawing the boxes first also gives you a chance to estimate the effect of the depth and distance before you start drawing too much detail. Take a look and you'll see that I'm also drawing layers of snow on the ground as interference between the stone lanterns here to break up the straight line of objects going towards the background. Much like the previous drawing, I'm trying to alternate between organic and geometric shapes. This is a really simple version of this technique, and you can add as many boxes as you like. I've drawn in red so you can see them here, but for your own drawings, remember to make your boxes very light so you can erase them before you add more detail. Number 3. Heavier lines in the foreground, with lines getting thinner as you move towards the background. Now this one is mostly for people who draw in black and white, but it can be used to interesting effect for color artworks too. The general idea is to have layers of focus within your composition, starting with quite heavy lines and gradually getting thinner as you go back. In this drawing, I'm deliberately using a series of pens with decreasing thickness, which is great if you have them. I'd recommend having at least one regular sized felt tip pen and one with a heavier tip. But if you don't have a variety of pens, you can simply build up the thickness you need by going over your lines multiple times until you reach the desired effect. You might notice that as the lines get thinner towards the background, I'm also breaking them up a little. Leaving small gaps in the lines gives the impression of a loss of focus. Again, this is really only effective in black and white drawings, as you have other techniques available to you when working in color. This looks pretty good on the whole, but one last touch I like to do is give a double heavy outline on each of the layers of thickness. It can make a huge difference separating foreground, midground and background, and draw the viewer's eye deeper into the picture. Number 4. Less contrast as you get further away. This technique can be great when you are composing your drawing from imagination, but is particularly effective when sketching out in the world. The next time you're outside, pay attention to things close up to you in comparison to things off in the distance. We've already talked about things behind other things and objects appearing smaller as they get further away. Now think about contrast. The closer an object is to the viewer, the higher the contrast. This could be the contrast between light and dark, the contrast between textures, colors, or details. This contrast softens and diminishes with distance. If you stand on your street and look as far as you can, you might see what I mean. Pay attention to repeating objects such as trees or power lines. Or if you're lucky enough to live somewhere with hills or mountains, see how objects close to you have higher levels of contrast in comparison to each layer of hills in the distance. In this drawing, I'm giving the 3 trees diminishing levels of contrast in light and dark for each one progressing further back. You can see that I'm treating each one with slightly less shadow each time and using a lighter touch with the brush pen. In the foreground, we can see that the bushes are completely black, and this also helps draw focus towards the center of the image. Try not to think of your drawing as just a background alone. Backgrounds are 2D, while settings are 3D. Make your drawing a setting for characters to move through. Number 5. Less detail as you get further away. Okay, with this drawing, I'm using a combination of earlier techniques, including thinner lines as we go back. But the main thing I'd like to focus on here is the idea that you can draw less detail for objects as they get further from the viewer. This concept has a lot in common with the previous note about contrast. Less detail as you get further away is very handy if you're drawing in black and white, as you can reduce complex objects to more simplified versions with distance, using fewer lines. Once again, this gives the impression of a diminishing focus with distance. You might also consider drawing those boxes from number 2 again, if you have repeating objects off in the distance. Now, I'm not actually shading this drawing, but using lots of little lines to illustrate my point. The tiny lines are doing the job of creating texture and shadow in the foreground. With each smaller airship in the picture, I can simply add fewer of these lines to give the impression of the shadows. This drawing is taking some pretty heavy inspiration from the French cartoonist Boulet, who has made a reputation out of his tiny lines to render shadow and texture in his drawings. While you're trying out some of these techniques, here's a bonus number 6 to think about. You don't need to know anything about perspective for this, just add something as a frame that the viewer is looking through to see the rest of the image. It can literally be a window frame, or as we see here, the branches of a tree. It could be a gap in the crowd, or the space between 2 items on a shelf. Experiment and have fun. If you draw in black and white, your frame could be a silhouette in the foreground. If you're working in color, you could create your frame contrasting cool tones with warm ones to draw your viewer's eye. So there we have a range of techniques for giving your drawings more depth. Take some time to try them out and see what works for you. I should add that these are not a substitute for really learning the rules of perspective, but they will definitely help. Have fun! You're watching Studio Brush Pen.